you sort of a sense of what happened before May of 2001 with the what's now very famous National Press Club event. So this was all going on with the idea that if we were to provide the correct information to the president and to his advisors and to members of Congress, the key people in Congress, they would do the right thing and would disclose this information because the Cold War had ended, and we thought, here's a fig leaf to put on the secrecy, even though it's a bit of a misdirect. But politicians always need to have a cover. CYA, Washington's all about cover your ass. So to explain 40 years of secrecy, they could have said, well, during the Cold War tensions, we didn't want to throw into that mix the fact that we're being visited by interstellar civilizations, and with also a program to study what their technologies are. And now that the Cold War is over, we can come clean. So I was recommending that they use that as an excuse for the chicanery that had gone on between 1956 and 1990s, 40 years. Well, it was an interesting thing that happened. In the fall of 1993, I was given a lecture at the Colorado State University, hosted by astronaut Brian O'Leary and Maury Albertson, who was one of the co-founders of the Peace Corps. And they became very, very close friends and supporters of what we were doing. And in that presentation, I laid out the entire sort of manifesto of justifying disclosure, ending secrecy, and what we should do. And at the end of that talk, and I don't know, there were maybe 800 people there, 1,000, something like that. There was a man, a little bald man, standing at the back of the room. And he wouldn't leave, and he waited till almost everyone was gone. He came up to me and he said, Dr. Greer, I think I can help you with this. I know some folks in Washington who want to know about this, but they're not getting any good answers. I said, well, like who? And I thought he was going to say, you know, staffers for Congressman blah blah from Nowhereville, Montana. And he said, well, I'm very good friends with the Director of Central Intelligence, the CIA Director, and he would like to be briefed on this. And of course I said, well, that's a good start. So initially that meeting was set up for November of 1993, and it got pushed back because of scheduling conflicts that he had and I had to December 13th, 1993. My wife, Emily, was there with me. And the cover story was a dinner party just here in Arlington at this man's home, and with his CI director and with his, the CI director's wife, Dr. Sue Woolsey, who was the Chief Operating Officer of the National Academy of Sciences. So, which is very good because I feel, well, we can get two birds with one stone here because she's a very senior scientist in a very prestigious institution. So again, we got a nanny for the kids, flew up to Washington, had this meeting. Now, normally when you meet with someone at cabinet level, it's a, very tight, maybe 20 minutes, 15, 30. This went on for about 3 hours. And the initial part of it, I had this whole briefcase and portfolio full of all these images of photographs and documents and cases and all this stuff. And after about 10 minutes, the CI director said, okay, I know this. We know that they exist. And it turns out he and his wife had had a sighting in New Hampshire when they were younger. I want to know, and this is the key question to answer, why won't they tell me and the president about it? I'm the CIA director. I said, well, that's another discussion. And at first, I got some hint of this when I got the letter, which I have in my archives, because subsequently, Woolsey tried to backpedal and say this briefing never happened. He publicly said so, and I can prove it to be a lie. I always say in Washington, how do you know they're lying? Their lips are moving. Lips are moving, that means they're lying. So, ouch. Did I just say that? Yeah, I did. It's on the record. There you go. So, but the letter I got describing the briefing from our host said that you're going to be the first person to brief the president's people and his CIA director on this issue because they've asked questions and they can't get anything through channels. Now, at that point, I have to say, I thought I was being Zoomed. I really thought this was a prevarication and that this spy master, the CIA director, just wanted to pick my brain, find out what we were doing with folks like the Rockefellers and da-da-da. And it turned out he 100% was out of the loop. He knew nothing about these projects, and he was being completely deceived by those who had compartmented intelligence within the agency, the CIA, and he literally was the emperor that had no clothes, and so was the president. So it was at that point, on December 13th, 1993, that I realized that we were living in a country that had undergone a quiet coup d'etat decades earlier. That isn't talked about in the New York Times and Washington Post because it would be the biggest story ever and the biggest scandal ever. They'd rather talk about the blue stain on a dress and other trivialities, or the stain on a blue dress, and rather than talking about the truth. And we, at that point, had put together a white paper, which is in my first book about extraterrestrial intelligence, which you can get on our website at seriousdisclosure.com. And it describes basically the plan of what needed to be done by the chief executive, the president and his people, to end the secrecy. So I had that in my hands, and I was giving it to the CIA director as he was leaving. And he looked at me and he said, "How can we disclose that which we have no access to?" Very chilling question. So, in other words, if we were to push on this, then it would unveil the biggest constitutional crisis in the United States history. And no president wants to admit that they're out of the loop on important things. No one wants to admit that. Therefore, he said, "We will do what we can do. I'll continue to look into this. Please continue to send any information you have to me through this contact. But we'll have to see what the president can do." That meeting, as I said, was about 3 hours. Most of it was talking about contact, the technologies, why secrecy would be as extreme as it is. And this is, the why of secrecy is much more difficult for people to get their minds around than the how. So let me first do the how. Everyone thinks there's something called above top secret. Well, in the United States government, most governments, there's no such thing. There's actually confidential, secret, and top secret. But then within these classifications, there are compartments. So you have TSSCI, top secret special compartmented intelligence. So TSSCI, it's the compartment you're in that matters. Some compartments, like what Edward Snowden exposed about PRISM, was a compartment that the president and the oversight committees of the Congress knew about. However misguided they may have been, they were legally overseeing compartments, which is why he's in trouble. There are other compartments that are unacknowledged special access projects. Special access projects require these clearances, and the unacknowledged ones mean exactly that. They are acknowledged to no one outside the compartment. And that includes the President of the United States or the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff or whoever. So one of the big mistakes that people make is conflating people's position in the military, the CIA, Congress, the presidency, the White House, the National Security Council, the whole alphabet soup of government agencies with access, all access, just because they have a top secret clearance, to every compartment. And I know men who are in one compartment and are in one section, and they have a friend that's in another compartment, and they both have top secret clearances, very high compartments, and they do not know what each other's working on. They may be best friends and they won't know. And that is how it works. But the unacknowledged special access projects mean that they're not acknowledged. And this is what Rumsfeld meant the day before 9/11. If you look at the film Sirius, when he said there's $2.3 trillion unaccounted for in the Department of Defense budget over the last few years. Not billion, trillion. Now it's at least 5 trillion. And now this is no flaming liberal. This is Donald Rumsfeld, okay, who dragged us into this misadventure called the Iraq War, along with Dick Cheney and some other neocons who didn't understand the Middle East, obviously. Or anything else for that matter, dealing with world politics. And so, but he literally said that. Now, I don't know if he knew it was being filmed, but it was, and we got it, and it's in the film Sirius. So, what does that mean? $2.3 trillion unaccounted for. It means that there is no accounting. I know an auditor who audits my uncle's old company was Northrop Grumman, which does a lot of top secret work on certain kinds of aircraft, just like Lockheed Martin has certain contracts dealing with anti-gravity propulsion craft. And if it's an unacknowledged compartment and it has some billions of dollars in it, the auditor will be told, you don't have a need to know what's going on with this, and it is just rubber stamped as an audit. They have no idea where that money's going. It goes in the front door. Where it's going through the back door, God only knows. All right? We estimate between $100 and $200 billion every year is going into the unacknowledged government. And this is a conservative estimate, unacknowledged. Congress doesn't know where it's going. The president doesn't know where it's going. A lot of senior military people don't know how it's being used and where it's going. My military advisor for 20 years was in one project that was a $3 billion unacknowledged special access project. The admiral that he was working under, where they basically went into a SCIF, a secure communication intelligence facility underground. Everyone's weapons were taken, everyone's cell phones, watches, anything electronic taken. One man went down there with them with a gun. And the gun was the security enforcement officer for that USAP, Unacknowledged Special Access Project, USAP. And they were all told, the guy took a bullet out of the chamber and they said, if you tell anyone about anything going on in this unacknowledged project, there is a bullet with your name on it and it will find you somewhere, somehow. Now this is not a movie. This is actually how that world works. That's the world I've lived in since 1993 or been exposed to. And so that is serious stuff. And they mean it. And so my military advisor said, oh, absolutely, this is no John le Carre novel or John Grisham story. This is really how the unacknowledged super black world operates. Now, of all the projects that are unacknowledged, black bag operations of all kinds, special operations of all kinds, the blackest and the most unacknowledged are ones dealing with UFOs and extraterrestrial intelligence, by far. And so that's why when you read the document from early 1950s from Canada, the Wilbur Smith document, where he says, after talking to someone in the United States government, this is a Canadian top secret document that got declassified accidentally. It's on our website. And he says this subject is the most secret subject in the United States and exceeds the secrecy surrounding the development of the hydrogen bomb. At that point, we hadn't detonated a hydrogen bomb. Imagine something more secret than the ultimate doomsday weapon. Not an atomic bomb, a thermonuclear hydrogen bomb, which is what we were working on in '51. So the thing I point out to folks is that these sort of operations have gotten so out of control that that's why Eisenhower said, beware the military-industrial complex when he left office in 1961, just before Jack Kennedy took office. And Eisenhower, on his watch, and he was bitter about this to the very end, Jackie Gleason, a famous comedian, his wife told our team that Jackie Gleason and Eisenhower were good friends, that Gleason was bitter about this and heartbroken about this to the day he died, that he had lost control over these UFO projects. And that happened between 1956 and 1961. Now, why did this extreme, so this gives you an idea of how unacknowledged special access projects work. They're hermetically sealed silos, and no one outside that compartment, that matter your position in government, doesn't matter your clearance, will know what you're doing in it. So wrap your mind around that. That is how these projects are managed. And we're talking an almost limited amount of money they can use in access to enforce this and run those projects. Is it legal? No. Is it dangerous? Yes. Because it is, by definition, completely without oversight of the people, the people's representatives, or the president, or for that matter, the senior folks at the Pentagon. I'll get to this in a moment. So at this point, I'm reeling. I'm just sort of like, I'm absorbing all this. Look, I'm a country doctor in North Carolina, rambling around in an ER, taking care of shootings and stabbings and car wrecks and burns and what have you. And this bag of crap gets handed off to me. And I think, well, you know, this is way past my pay grade. I'm just, and in January or early February 1994, a friend of the president's comes to our home, a man that I had met sometime earlier. And name is Kevin Foley. This is years enough gone, I'll go share his name. And his brother would stay overnight at the White House a lot and have breakfast with the president. He was a big fundraiser for President Clinton from Minnesota. Foley family, very well-known political family. And I'd gone up there and met with his family and what have you. And he came back to my home and he said, well, we were having dinner around the table and we in this house and we had in North Carolina. And he turns to me and he says, well, the president and his folks really are very supportive of what you're recommending in this white paper, this set of recommendations I'd given the CIA director. But they're concerned that if he does this, he'll end up like Jack Kennedy. And I start laughing. I think, well, I think he's joking. I mean, this is ridiculous. And he stops me. And because he was sort of a big, kind of heavy-set, jolly, sort of gregarious political operative, you know, and I just thought he was making a joke. Like if I tell you I have to kill you sort of cliche. And he stopped me and he says, no, they're not kidding. I said, well, Kevin, don't talk about this in front of the children. The children were small then. And I said, we need to, you know, talk in the library after dinner about this. So we went to the library after dinner to talk about this issue. And I was very, very concerned that this could even be on the radar of anyone at the White House. And he says, yes, absolutely. The president is convinced, and his people are convinced, that if he were to push on this issue, that he would be subject to a TWEEP, a termination with extreme prejudice. TWEP, TWEEP. And I said, well, then what do you want me to do? I mean, look, I mean, it's not like I've got a Secret Service detail. And he said, well, no, they think you can do this. You should go ahead and try to bring this stuff together and bring it. I said, oh, yes. I said, I'm expendable. He says, yes. I said, doesn't matter if I get killed, you can't risk the president. He said, that's right, you are expendable. So from then I always call myself the throwaway guy. Doesn't matter if I get killed, you know, because I'm nobody and I remain nobody. So, and I want to be a nobody in terms of politics and conventional power. So I'm very happy to be a nobody. So what, I use that term in the sense of how Washington thinks. The currency of power. And I said, well, I'll do what I can, but you know, this is a very steep climb.